Sweet, sweet. Welcome. So this is our monthly call, office hours, Inc. And today we kindly welcome A0 guys, Dennis, Mike, and Nimish. Who's going to talk about more about the name service called A0, one of the first full-scale production dApps deployed and developed using Ink. So I would give a moment to guys to introduce themselves and talk a bit more about the project they're building.
Nice. Okay, I might just start. I mean, what I can see right now from the people who are in the space right now, that I think all of them are somehow or do somehow know who we are. But let me just still do a quick introduction. So I'm Mike, co-founder of AZERO.ID and Sile Labs. And actually, I'm in crypto since late 2016. So I just started with crypto basically by investing a little bit into Bitcoin and other coins, altcoins back then. And then, like over the time, I had sometimes a bit more time to follow the space, sometimes a bit less. But I was always super interested in following what kind of like new technological advancements have been made. And then in 2021, I finally joined the space full time after digging a bit into venture capital in the startup industry. And then first I started as a venture builder and venture analyst for a Web3 venture studio in Berlin. This is also the place where I've met Dennis. Dennis, co-founder also of AZERO Labs and AZERO.ID. And yeah, since then we did a lot of cool, interesting stuff. And our main project is actually AZERO.ID, and really happy to share more about this during the call today.
Hey, how about you, Dennis?
Great. Yeah, I'm Dennis, a full stack Web3 developer. Studied computer science originally, and then spent about 6, 7, 8 years in health tech. Then I made a full-time switch to Web3 about 2.5, 3 years ago. Attended many conferences, hackathons, worked for some smaller DAOs and grants. Also met Mike along the road, as he told. And then, yeah, like about a year ago, we started with AZERO.ID at ETH Warsaw 22.
That's awesome. And I'll pass the word to Nimish.
Hey guys, I'm Nimish Agarwal. I'm the protocol lead at AZERO.ID. So I got in the blockchain space in early 2017, and since then I've been following the space and learning about the technology and how I can contribute to it. I got in the Polkadot ecosystem in 2019, I guess, like later part of the 2019, I was introduced to the Polkadot APEC hackathon, and that was the first time when I started building on it. Though I had made initial investments before, but that was the introduction for me from a technical perspective. I have a degree in computer science and have been like building smart contracts for the A0ID and doing research so that we can improve our product and how we can utilize the features that are enabled by the substrate and make full use of it.
That's awesome. So I can guess we have a very tech-savvy speakers today. So next question I have for you guys is, again, you kind of briefly touched on how you started Scilabs, but can you tell a bit more about the background and what's the mission behind your project and company?
Yeah, sure, sure. Happy to take this question. So for the people who are here and have never heard about Sile Labs, so it's basically our development company behind projects such as AZERO.ID, but also some other smaller things we built on the sideline. And we like actually founded it almost exactly 1 year ago. So Dennis and me were like experiencing a lot of like interesting, cool things in the crypto space. We were looking into different projects. We started building some smaller projects, did some consulting gigs, and we're all the time looking for the next big thing we want to build full time. And at the same time, we realized that building in crypto is kind of risky depending on what you do. And this means that you have to be aware about certain regulatory things. And especially if you are German residents, so both as me as co-founders, we live in Germany, we just thought at the beginning we need to have some kind of legal umbrella which we can use to develop crypto products. So this was like the birth of Sile Labs. And since then, our, let's say, thesis or our vision and mission has ever expanded. And we started with like building out a few small projects such as stablecoins WTF. But then we started AZERO.ID. Back then it was, or we started as a hackathon project at ETH Warsaw 2022. And back then it was called AZERO Domains. And then we realized, hey, this is not just one simple name service on one small, or back then small ecosystem. It's actually something where we can really improve the user experience for the overall blockchain space. And we really want to push this to a proper, long-lasting, sustainable, and organically grown part of a Web3 world. So we just needed some kind of like company pushing forward to this. And over the time, also doing the development with Inc. and our experience with Inc., we saw that there's also a need for additional dev tooling to make it actually way easier for new developers and interested people to join this ecosystem and start building products, protocols, and other things, same as we did back then. So we also started building developer tooling such as Incathon, and this is actually pretty cool. It's a full stack boilerplate for Inc development or Inc dApp development. And I guess Dennis will tell you a little bit more about this in the details later in this call. But this is basically the story of Sile Labs. And yeah, so looking forward, we actually want to push what we have been building so far and launched on the ALAP0 mainnet also for the entire Polkadot ecosystem. And this is also something I will like tell you a bit more in terms of what is the actual like story behind this idea and why we think this is needed in the Polkadot ecosystem later in this space.
Awesome. I mean, it's such a cool thing that like group of coders just come together, hack something, put something together, and then turn it into a business. I mean, this is how it's supposed to start. So, how many developers there are in the Sile Labs, and what kind of the roles? How do you like distribute the task and tickets among each other?
I think in total we are now like 8 people. Not all are full time, so we have some part-time contributors working on it. And I think in terms of the tech stack or what kind of like what focus we can actually build everything our own. So we have like competencies in smart contract development, but also design, front-end development, technical writing. So the whole package you need to actually create something sustainable in the blockchain space. But at the same time, we are also working together with other external contributors, but also agencies who are specified in certain parts of product development in crypto. So we're really trying to look for the best solution. And sometimes it's doing something in-house, sometimes it's getting some support, external support. So we are kind of open in terms of finding the best structure to build on projects. Yeah. I mean, for example, in the case of AZERO.ID, we are in the ecosystem funding program of the ALAP0 Foundation. And this is pretty cool because it's not only monetary support, but at the same time, the development company behind the fund, behind ALAP0, it's called Cardinal Cryptography, has also a lot of resources in terms of design, technical assessment, research, R&D, especially in the cryptographic side of things. And they are also like helping us with a lot of different things by building AZERO.ID.
I mean, that's I guess like I feel like you've got lots of going on right now. So we've been talking about AZERO, and for people who are newcomers, who've never heard of it, can you share a bit more, like what AZERO is? How did you come up with this idea, and like what's so special about it?
Of course, yeah. So I think I will take over here now, Mike. Thank you. So AZERO.ID actually at its core is a Web3 domain name service. So like all of you or most of you probably know ENS, the Ethereum name service, which is a Web3 domain name service on Ethereum. So the main problem domain services actually solve is like abstracting away long, complicated wallet addresses and improving the UX for the user, that they can, if they want to target someone, for example, in a wallet, they can just use their domain let's say Dennis.A0 instead of like a 40 character long alphanumeric string, which they have to double check 3 times to make sure they're not like sending assets into the void. So this is like a domain service use case at the core. Of course, like we are like trying to solve many more stuff and building many more features on top of that, solving problems ENS has, which I will like speak about in detail maybe a little bit later. So the current version, which is deployed on AlepZero mainnet of AZERO.ID, basically is like a simple registry contract written in Ink for all of it. So it's mapping domains to wallet addresses in a sense. It's a little bit more complicated as there's also some kind of role system, which makes it easy to hold your domain on one wallet and control it on another and let it resolve to a third one, even if you want to. Then we have like a flexible metadata storage also on chain, which is just like simply some kind of key value storage, but like can solve also a lot of like interesting use cases. All our domains are compatible to the PSP34 standard, which is like the NFT standard in Ink at the moment. So all our domains are tradable as NFTs, which we think actually domains should be. So like not someone who registered the domain is like claiming the name and the namespace for eternity, but instead it needs to be renewed. It's tradable on a secondary market, so it solves a lot of problems. Yeah, I think that's like our domain service at the core. I can go a little bit about the experience we had launching it. What do you think, Jamal?
Yeah, I wanted to ask first about like ENS and AZERO.ID with relation to ENEAS. Like, so obviously, I'm sure you have looked into the service. Are there any like downsides or like problems you experienced with ENEAS that you addressed in your that you believe like make your service different?
Yeah, 100% happy to do so. Like one like one problem besides that, like making transactions on Ethereum is like super slow, and if you're like registering a domain on AlepZero, it takes you like only 1 second or even sub-second finality on AlepZero. Like that's one thing like our users always notice first. But other than that, we are actually solving one of the biggest, or we are planning to solve one of the biggest problems ENS has, in our opinion, which is domain squatting. So we will implement like some kind of mechanism Vitalik proposed about a half a year ago in a blog post, which is so-called demand-based pricing. So actually something we have not live yet, but like it's in the R&D phase, is building our own domain native NFT marketplace. And then like people can bid on domains, and if there is like a very high bid on a like very worthy domain, the owner should not be able to keep that domain for, let's say, $5 a year. That's just extracting value from the namespace, and they will just keep it for eternity because they are speculating on value increase over time. So we will be solving this squatting problem by implementing a demand-based pricing algorithm. That's one of the things we will do better than ENS.
And maybe to add one thing, which is, yeah, sorry.
Mike?
Sure.
I think okay, sorry, I think I missed your request, but what I've wanted to add is actually that one of the biggest pain points when using domains on Ethereum in general, but also with ENS, is that you have a wallet and then you register a domain, and then this domain is like always associated to this certain wallet. And usually you go for a domain, especially if you just want to have one domain, which somehow represents your identity, right? So it could be your brand, it could be your existing username you have on Twitter or on some other social networks, but it's something which is kind of associated to your real world identity. And if you then actually want to leverage this and want to leverage this on-chain domain, on-chain username for all your like daily interactions, then you make it even easier for everyone to see which person is doing what on the chain, right? So you're revealing everything. And this is something which is pretty like bad user experience, especially if you want to scale like something like this to the masses. And what people end up doing is they just have their main domain on a burner wallet, which they not use for anything, just maybe for connecting to some protocol. But at the same time, they manage 5 or even more undoxed wallets, unrelated wallets without a domain associated for their daily interactions where they do not want others to see what they do on chain. And this then again leads to a poor user experience. And this is nothing we can expect from especially the next millions of users we all want to have in this space. So our solution would be to actually obfuscate the connection between the domain and the wallet, and then combine this with a ledger such as AZERO, where you have the ability to privately transact on chain. And this means then you can actually leverage your real world identity on chain based on your brand you have been creating and building up, and still you don't reveal what you do. And this is, we believe, one of the key key concepts for mass adoption of domains and in general, like blockchain usage and interaction. If we lost
I guess
you,
we will
I'm there.
just continue speaking a bit, or should we wait for him?
Can you hear me, guys?
Yeah, no, we
Sorry
hear
about
you
that.
again.
Like, just internet broke out. I mean, awesome. I just wanted to ask about your experience using Ink, since you mentioned quite a few times that like your primary smart contract language and the only smart contract language that you use behind AZERO.ID is Ink. So, would love to hear and listen to your experience while like developing it and being one of the first adopters. I mean, we as an Ink team are very proud of what you build, guys. Very happy. I mean, all, you know.
Yeah, very happy to go ahead and take this question. I think Nimish, you can step in a little bit later and go on a more technical level. Like I will describe really quick how our launch experience was. So like maybe let's like zoom one step out first. Like when we started in 2022 at ETH Warsaw, there wasn't even Ink V4 out. So the actual hackathon where this project originated was still happening on Ink V3 with like even more like I would say like not stability issues, but like even a less a smaller ecosystem than it's today. Like a lot of things, many things improved since then. So this was like a rough challenge, I would say, back in Warsaw last year. Then after the hackathon, when we got a grant from the AZERO Foundation to continue working on it, bringing it to mainnet, we actually started migrating everything to Ink V4 during its beta without even having the new documentation being live yet, which was also, I would say, complicated and a challenge. But we got a lot of support also from the AZERO guys, so we somehow managed to pull that off. And also the new documentation is amazing, I would say, with so many content. We would love to have this had this back in the day, but like we were also able to do it this way. On the like, of course, like building such a dApp, as I always say, requires two sides of the medal, not only the front end, and not only the contract side, but also the front end side, the UX side, the integration side, the deployment side, and so on. And like on the different levels, especially regarding front end and tooling, a lot of parts were missing in the recent year, I would say. A lot of things have also improved on this side. But still, it's a small ecosystem, obviously, and it's just natural that like a few things are missing or maybe not there yet where they are on the EVM side. But it's really making some great progress in the recent months, I would say. Also, we try to do our part a little bit with the boilerplate Mike mentioned, Inkaton. So a lot of hurdles have actually been solved, and like then the development experience actually becomes like really cool. Like you have the Rust ecosystem with all the packages at your hand. You have like some nice tools like Contracts UI. The front end development tooling is coming along its way with, for example, use Ink or use Inkaton. Ink documentation is now very good. And especially developing on Aleph is a great experience, I would say, because you have this sub-second finality, which makes you like, if you can actually develop on the testnet if you want to. It's like the same. It's like feels like local speeds, to be honest. And to conclude our experience, maybe I will drop a few launch stats, because like we, as most of you may know, we launched on mainnet almost 2 months ago, and since then almost 3,000 domains got registered. We have more than 800 unique holders. So that's, I would say, actually that like exceeded our expectations. So we are really happy with our launch stats, and yeah, we'll try to improve from here.
I mean, congrats! I've been watching the release. I've also registered a couple of domains, and I can confirm that the UI and user experience were perfect, butter smooth, and haven't seen like this kind of level of user experience about this space for a long time. And like, want to ask a question around that, like how like did you achieve that? We briefly talked during Sub-Zero about like front-end tooling, and you did mention the importance of developing and focusing front end, sometimes saying that front end is more important than back end, specifically smart contract development. Can you talk a bit more about that?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely don't want to like reduce the importance of smart contracts here. Like, I think they're really important. I think like having great execution there is really important. I think having great security there, also an audit, is very important, which we did, by the way, together with Kudelski Security, which was also like part of the AZERO ecosystem funding program. So thanks again here. But what like my point is, if you really want to have a dApp that has like a great UX, it's like UX is not only design, it's like how many steps does the user need to come from A to B. It's like performance, it's obviously also design and the structure of the page. And this like is way easier to achieve with the right tooling at your hand and the right expertise as well, of course. And just in my experience, like pulling all of this off, like from the first wireframes to like the fifth design iteration, then implementing it, implementing the front end, and then having even after that feedback loops with users internally. Then we did some kind of beta testing, which was kind of semi-private with like a few of our early community members, which also helped a lot. Like, and after like all of those iterations, it's really some effort that got into all of this, and I'm happy you like it, and I'm happy this pays off.
Mark, do you want to say anything on that regard?
Actually, I would maybe provide the stage for Nimish, because I think it might be interesting for the developers in the audience to go maybe again a bit deeper into the smart contracts and the ink. Coming back to your
Exactly.
initial question, but other than that, I think Dennis really like summarized it pretty good. So it was a smooth launch, and we got a lot of support from all the stakeholders in the ecosystem. You guys, AZERO, Parity Web3 Foundation. So we are kind of happy how it went, and looking forward to the next milestones to come.
Awesome. Then moving on, talking about ink specifically, the kind of like the common question I ask everyone at the Jamson monthly call with me is, can you name one thing that you hate and one thing that you love about ink, and how does it compare to Solidity?
Sure. So, like one thing that I particularly like about Ink is that it has the inbuilt support of upgradability and unit tests. So it is like quite easy. Like we don't expect that the contract is deployed and it will not have features in the futures. So having the ability of proxying in the like Solidity is prone to errors. There might be some changes or the things that might get left behind, but the ability to just change the code base within the same address without having to maintain proxy is quite convenient from my perspective, like how I developed the smart contract level code for the A0 ID, and having unit tests just alongside the code is also quite convenient. I don't have to switch to other folders and make some artifacts so that I can test it out. So, and the one thing that I hate about ink is like sometimes the errors are ambiguous and vague. Like it is hard to figure out like what exactly is the cause of problem. Like sometimes like there is some issue with the storage deposit limit. So it is not like something trivial to understand like what is the exact issue, that am I sending not sufficient values, or like sometimes it is a case that the user doesn't have funds, but the error is not quite straightforward. This is something like I don't particularly like about Ink. And in terms of the comparison with Solidity, so Solidity is inspired by JavaScript. So there are a lot of developers who are familiar with JavaScript, though, and Ink is based on Rust, and the community of Rust is growing. So this should not be a problem in the upcoming future. And the further comparisons, like the pros and cons of like what does the Ink, which is better compared to the Solidity, and what things that Solidity has, which if Ink could have in the future, would be a real convenience for the developers. So like in Ink, you can extend the ability that is using the like ability to interact with the runtime. So things which may not be possible with Solidity, like Solidity is sandbox to the smart contract environment itself, but with the support of Substrate, so you can have features that may not be possible with EVM. You can make use of existing libraries that are already built in Rust. And as I also already mentioned about the unit test and the upgradability feature, so it really improves the developer experience. And one more thing is like Ink has like in the palette, it is exact mainly the feature of palette contract exactly, but like even we can speak for the Ink, like we have code hashes which is stored on chain. So you can create multiple instances with the same code hash. So if a code hash has been audited, so it is more transparent to the user. So like users can verify this code has been audited. So they have more trust that there is nothing malicious, because like if we consider like if there's some token standard, so even though it exposes some token standard, but the developer can introduce malicious code, or they can maybe unintentionally introduce bug, but having this code hash maybe improves the like cause that the users, the developers will not have to audit every code, even though it is same. And one last thing probably is like re-entrancy guard. Like we see like it is quite common, like the contracts get hacked because of some re-entrancy, but Ink by default prevents the re-entrancy of code. So if you think that the code should be allowed to re-enter, so you have to manually enable it. So it is quite good developer decision, or the decision at the low level side, so that such issues doesn't arise. And in the case of the pros of Solidity, I think like what I saw like multiple times users want to have nested mapping. So it is not as simple as it is in Solidity. You can create a tuple of key, but it is probably on the easier side on the Solidity, and maybe it has a easier learning curve. That's, in my opinion, the comparison I can think of right now.
Thank you, Nimish. That's definitely valuable feedback. Just one thing I wanted to mention about E2E testing. AZERO has been also kindly contributing to the further development of the framework, and Ink 5 are going to feature runtime only testing that basically allows you to kind of simulate pilot contract without running the node behind. And we also slightly refactored the interface by adding a builder API that allows you to build your calls in a more idiomatic and intuitive way without like specifying all this like default parameters like storage deposit limit that's usually set to 0. But if you want to specify, there's an option. So we're glad that you enjoy it, and we look forward for further feedback. But moving on, I want to ask about the grant. So we've been talking about, you mentioned to me and other guys from Ink that you've been applying to grant, and we're desperate to hear more details about it. Can you share the specifics?
Yeah, sure. Dennis, do you want to go ahead, or should I go? Should I take this?
Yeah, I can take over
Yeah,
here.
awesome.
Don't worry. So as Mike teased earlier, like our first vision is building a privacy enhanced domain service on Aleph Zero, and our second big vision is actually expanding our contract level Inc. domain name service to Polkadot or to the whole Dotama ecosystem, and create a unified namespace or a unified domain namespace across all parachains, and like make it easily accessible from all parachains as well. So basically, you have one unique namespace, and you can register, you can manage, you can resolve, you can trade your domain from everywhere with any kind of like native parachain currency. And to research such a solution or how such a solution would look like, we applied and also got approved for a research grant by the Web3 Foundation earlier. We already like submit the first milestone, which contained obviously a lot of like research regarding the possibilities of XCM and how to get it work in Ink and so on. And the goal of the grant, where we are going to submit the second and last milestone, probably this or maybe next week. The goal is to have like a architecture defined how such a unified domain name system could look like, and also a working POC, which actually will be the first ever XCM enabled ink contracts. So we will also make sure to, also we have like a little blog post in the works, which will be some kind of walk through how we achieve that or how anyone else could achieve this. And maybe also could be, we know like Parity and the Palette Contracts team is working on a lot of like improvements in this regard, but we think like already like seeing how it works with the runtime calls right now could be very interesting for a technical audience. So I think Nimish can share a lot more technical details here.
Yep, sure. So it was like quite fun as well as frustrating while researching and going through the errors and the issues of making the in context compatible and having it interact across the chains. So we set up the Axiom simulator as our playground so that we can experiment it without having to like deploy the nodes, and it actually like really simplified the experience so that like I think it improved the time or shortened the time it took to test the things like is it working or not. And we refer to the implementation provided by Trappist, Polkadot, Axiom docs. Though there was some issue like each one had some different implementation, and going through it for the first time was a bit confusing, like which one should I pick and what is all the things that are needed. But going through with time allowed us like what are the things that actually matters. So that is for the like playground. And for the like XM integration in the in contracts, so we made use of the call runtime feature and the palette XCM. So we also had the doubt like whether should we go with the call runtime or have chain extensions. But then we decided to go with the call runtime because we are not expecting any input back within the same call. So the call runtime doesn't allow any return value, but the chain extension does. But the chain extension has a more overhead of maintaining on each chain. So we thought that call runtime is more flexible and something because there's already a repo palette contracts repo, so which palette contracts XCM, which already makes use of chain extensions to enable XCM. So we decided like let's try the different path and see like what's all different there. So this is the like higher level overview, like what was the setup and how we integrated it. So next, the question was like, what should be the architecture for the contracts to interact with each other? So we explored various topologies like P2P, like each node has an equal right, and match like each node is connected to like each contract, like the contracts would be deployed on every chain so that they can the users can simply interact with that contract. They don't have to make manual XCM calls to the contract on our host chain. But each one had some issue, like it is not scalable. Like if I make some changes on this chain, so it should be forwarded to every other chain because the data consistency is important. You don't want like on chain one the address is pointing to some other address and address A, and on some other chain, it is pointing to some address B. So it is not at a safe. So we decided to go with the hub and spoke model, that we will have one primary chain that will be maintaining all the data, and other chain will request that chain to access the data. It is like possible that we may segregate the data, so that if a user has a primary preference for having their data stored on chain A, so they can do it, but they will have to go through the primary chain. It's just like how the Polkadot ecosystem, or like the parachains, will go through the Polkadot relay chain and then forward to the second parachain. So in the contract architecture, we have three contracts. Like on the primary chain, we will have the state handler, which will be doing the business, which will be handling the business logic. Then there would be the second contract, Axiom handler, which will verify whether the incoming requests are valid and authenticated and have the valid formats. And on all the other supported chains, we will deploy the XC contract, which will make the call to the Axiom handler. And this way, the data will be shared between the chains. Though a user can also make the call by themselves directly to the state handler, but then they don't have to go to the Axiom handler. But the requirement or the responsibility of creating the Axiom instruction set will be forwarded to that developer. So that's how like we build the XM enable encounter. Though there were a lot of challenges regarding the auto callback, so that you don't have to first make a request, then get the request back. So it happens within a single call, though you will have to wait it because it is in async nature. But the number of actions that a users need to make on secondary chains would be minimal. And we also plan to introduce cache layers, so that users can get the data even synchronously, while ensuring that the data integrity is maintained by using semaphores.
I mean, that's awesome that you've been experimenting with XCM, and XCM support is one of the moonshots, and I believe we've already rolled out initial support for XCM PR. I think it's available on GitHub and should be merged pretty time soon, and should be released with Inc 5.0 release. So also would love to hear feedback on that PR, guys, if we can have a look. But also, if I understand correctly, the proof of concept for this grant is already available publicly on GitHub. Is that right?
Like we will publish it, like it is right now closed source, but once we like make the submission for the milestone 2 grant, then we will open source the
So it's only a
codes
matter
that
of
is.
days or a week when it's publicly available.
And we are also planning on publishing a tutorial like blog post, so that the developers who are thinking of using XM enabled in contracts can utilize that information to get started within like 1 or 2 days of understanding, so that the knowledge that we collected over the past months researching the topic and the issues we face will not be the case for the new developers, and it would be easier for them to start building on XM enabled in contracts.
Awesome. I mean, as soon as it's available, please share the link. We'll definitely post it on our Twitter for everyone to see and have a look. But then the next question I have for you guys is, so what's next for A0 and Scilabs? What kind of your ambitions? So you talk about the grant, but what's kind of the long-term goal like with the A0? Like what's kind of the ultimate, you know, the ultimate setup you're looking at with A0?
Yeah, great question. I will take this one. So we have a lot of things planned and coming up for the next months, maybe years, and it's kind of what we see as like some kind of end game of user experience and extracting away the complexity of interacting with a blockchain. And I mean, the first step is obviously creating a really like sophisticated, well-working, and sound domain system, as we already did on LF0. For the AZERO.ID on LF0, the next step is obviously also going for the privacy features, which we are promising and we are already researching. But for this, we have to wait for like the liminal framework, the privacy framework of LF0 to be deployed on test and mainnet. But this is probably also happening in the next month. So exciting times to come. But then additionally, we actually extended our vision, and we want to create even in the next step will be definitely what we have been researching now for the Polkadot ecosystem to bring this into production. And this will obviously require a lot of efforts on the development side. But this is what we will do in the next months, and we believe that we can really push the user experience on Polkadot forward, become the very first production-ready cross-parachain Inc. smart contract application, and at the same time also an application which can push the ecosystem forward and also somehow benefit other applications and use cases on the chain. Because how we see domains in the long term is that this is a primitive which can actually abstract away not only the public key of your wallet, as what it's like the main functionality you can also see on ENS with on Ethereum, but also the private key. So just imagine we combine account abstraction features with smart contract wallet functionality and the ease of use of a domain, and then create this maybe in a super easy to use application to onboard users to any kind of crypto application, to any chain. And this is like kind of a vision we are looking for and what we want to research and develop in the next time, so that we in the end really can create applications or can provide a Web3 world which feels like a Web2 world, right? So that you can just harness the advantages and the value increase of blockchain without all the disadvantages in terms of user experience, which is currently the main reason why we don't get the adoption. Because once we get rid of this, then we have this kind of value increase based on efficiency, lower costs, immutability, security, all of those basic advantages of using a blockchain in your backend. And we want to make this happen. At the same time with Sio Labs, so this was the end game for AZERO.ID, but at the same time with Sio Labs, you really see us as a core supporter or stakeholder also in the Inc. ecosystem. This is also why we have been putting so much efforts into creating developer tooling such as Inkathon or the use Inkathon library. And actually, we have a lot of other things in this direction coming up, or we are really planning to develop. Also happy to share that, or we will soon be able to share a grant we have also received for pushing this forward. And at the same time, we are currently preparing a Polkadot treasury proposal to be able to maintain and develop such tooling in even better state, so we can really improve the developer experience by a 10x of its current state. And it's interesting because currently there's also a Polkadot forum discussion about the developer experience in general. And what we have seen, reading the discussions, that exactly such toolings are missing. And we really have to reach a state that just takes just one day or a couple of hours for a developer to get started and deploy the very basic but first version of an Inkdep on a testnet. And if we are able to deliver this, then we can really, or we'll probably see a huge inflow of developers and applications into the Ink ecosystem. And we believe that Ink will become one of the biggest players in the smart contract language, vertical in Web3.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that, Mike. I mean, that's great that you pushing the adoption and then working on the user adoption and the user experience, which is, I think, this is crucial for the Web3 adoption. Then I have maybe one or two last questions, and so you've obviously decided to give back to the community by releasing Ink Hackathon, a hackathon Ink-based template with front end and some of the sample contracts. So then I would ask you maybe to give a piece of advice to anyone who's looking at building their next Ink, full stack production dApps, and maybe experience things you learn from mistakes while working on AZERO.ID. Anything that you think will be valuable for newcomers at Ink to know.
I think this is a perfect question for Dennis, who was the main developer behind the Inkathon boilerplate.
Yeah, probably very biased answer. So definitely use Inkathon.xyz to, like, at least if you're not going to end up using it for your production dev, that's fine. But I think it's like a perfect entry point to spin up your local development environment, including contracts, including front end in a matter of minutes, and being able to have like a small feeling of success when you see, oh, it's like not that hard to like run a local dev. It's not that hard to run a local node, to deploy a contract on it, and actually see this contract being deployed on a local node in your front end instantly. So I think like that's perfect to like play around with all the necessary parts for building in the end a full stack production ready dev.
And any kind of hints with the development with regards to ink? Anything that newcomers in ink should be, careful about, look out?
Nimish, probably one for you.
Like the user should definitely look at the Ink examples. Like it is a really good source to understand the things that are offered by Ink. Like I see a lot of users, like people asking like how to initialize the contract, or if the contract is already initialized, so how they can access that. So it is, I think like the docs have improved significantly. So if they can go through the docs properly, so they will definitely find the answer. And setting up the Ink environment is also quite easy. So the onboarding experience should also not be a tough task.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. And unless you have any questions, you have questions from the audience, we're more than happy to take any questions from the audience. If you have questions for AZERO guys, just raise your hand or drop your question in the comments below, and I'll ask them on your behalf. So unless there are no more questions, I think we can conclude it here. Thank you, guys. Check out AZERO.ID. Also,
Thank you for having us.
yeah, awesome. Look forward to speaking to you again, maybe next monthly call. Best of luck with the grant proposals, and yeah, have a good day.
Thank you. You too.
Likewise. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
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 Bye, guys.